if they wanted to, they would. Sounds empowering until you realize that it only works if everyone actually expresses themselves in the same way. Because sometimes they did want to, they just didn't show up in the way that you expected. Welcome to another episode of She's Probably Talking to Other Guys. I'm your host, Annie Rockhill of the Banana Diaries. Let's dive right into this chat. Just a friendly reminder, I'm not a therapist, psychologist, or expert in human behavior. This is a judgment-free, assumption-checking zone. Take what resonates and leave the rest. First things first, let's discuss why we love this phrase so much. And there's honestly so many reasons. I'm not even going to be able to name all of them. But the phrase, if they wanted to, they would, kind of simplifies maybe some chaos that's going on and wraps it up with a little bow into something clean. It helps us to kind of justify whatever this person didn't do. So maybe it helps you to feel that you can close a door that you weren't sure if you should close or not. I do feel that if they wanted to, they would. Tends to help give you a reason to kind of not guess, but to maybe know. Again, know in like quotes because you don't really know. But to have this idea of, well, this is why they didn't put effort in, it kind of protects you from over investing yourself into something that maybe you wanted, but you were waiting for them to show up first, something along those lines. This also gives closure without confrontation. So if you're looking for closure, if you think about if they wanted to, they would. When you process that line, it almost kind of gives you a reason to not have to speak to them again. So there's your closure without confrontation because now you don't need to talk to them about why they didn't do what they did or this and that. It also can help to feel like self-respect after maybe someone was inconsistent with you, which I feel like, yes, these are all so important. They all kind of come back to communication at the end of the day, but let's put that thought aside for a second. If they wanted to, they would. Personally, I have used this to kind of help myself to move on from situations. But you do know that I love a good game of devil's advocate, which we are going to dive into later. Around here we love assumptions, so let's take some initial assumptions. We're not going to dive deep into these ones. I have some other ones that we'll dive into. If we assume that effort is always obvious, something that we see right away, something that is noticeable, then we're kind of missing out on tiny moments. There are so many ways that people can put effort in that maybe make your life so easy, but they're not that obvious. And I think that those little tiny details get missed out on when you think if they wanted to, they would. We assume that desire always looks consistent, which this is like not accurate whatsoever. I've said before that I have no idea when anyone's flirting with me. And there are some times where I'm like, oh, wow, I really am aware that this person is flirting with you. That was so obvious. But other times I'm like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure they're flirting with me, but like, I don't know. So that's a little example of like, desire does not always look the same. And if you take it from a non-romantic perspective as well, someone can want something so bad, but still have a deep underlying reason as to why they're not going after it. So, no, desire does not always look consistent. We assume that someone's communication style is equal to their intention. And again, that's not because some people are introverted and the way that they communicate might be very different and maybe indirect compared to someone who is extroverted and very comfortable just asking for things that they want. There's two completely different communication styles, but they can both end up in intention. So let's dive into some assumptions on if they wanted to, they would. Number one, wanting automatically produces action. I don't believe that's accurate whatsoever. I think that there's a lot that happens in order for someone to actually go after something that they want. And some people are just naturally comfortable going after what they want, and other people are a bit more hesitant about it. For example, I'm a logical person. So before I make a decision, you bet that I've already gone through a lot of different ways to make sure that what I want is going to end up being successful. That being said, I am also very spontaneous and I will just say yes to doing things. So I feel like right there is also a pure example of why that assumption is not necessarily always true, because as I mentioned before, there are times where I want something so bad, but I also don't know if I'm going to make someone else uncomfortable by saying something. Let's say in like a romantic way. Sometimes I don't know if someone feels the same way, and that does stop me from saying something. We're not all perfect, myself included. So I think that when it comes to the phrase, if they wanted to, they would. Yes, but no, because there are times when I wanted to, but I didn't for whatever reason, whether it was fear or being nervous or afraid of looking embarrassed. There are so many things that could fall into why I wanted to, but I didn't. Up next, effort always looks recognizable. We talked about this just a minute ago, and it doesn't. That's the thing. I think that a lot of times people expect these big grand gestures when it comes to effort. So, for example, let's just talk about the concept of someone bringing flowers to you. There's no right or wrong, by the way. So, a lot of women see someone bringing you fresh flowers as a sign of effort and something that's really sweet and really caring and this and that. Let's take me for an example. I would really love for someone to bring me a 12 pack of Celsius instead of fresh flowers. And there's no right or wrong with that. I think it's just to each their own. And again, like your effort doesn't always have to be something that's so big and that's so massive, right? Like it could literally be, I know that something makes my best friend's life a little bit easier. So maybe even though we're really far away, maybe I'm going to like Uber eat her a coffee. Like that is something so tiny, but it's something that can kind of change the trajectory of someone's day, or maybe just give like a little pick me up if I know that she's having a hard day. We can also just talk about a simple text message. You could just maybe send an extra text message that says, hey, just thinking about you. Like, hope your day is going well. Again, romantic or non-romantic. But I think effort doesn't always have to be something big. Effort could be loading the dishwasher when you don't usually do that task yourself. Maybe you have your tasks assigned and someone else usually does it. But maybe you're just like, okay, I'm going to load the dishwasher. Right? There was a dying tree in my yard, and instead of making someone else do it, when I know that they're really busy and they're really tired, I just took out a shovel and I just dug it out myself and got rid of it. I mean, again, it's something where they don't have to be big things, they can be little things. And by the way, I consider like volunteering to dig out a tree a little thing. I don't really even seem to think that that's a big deal. But again, to each their own, everyone's different. But effort is not always recognizable, for sure. People have equal emotional capacity. Absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. I would say for me, if we use myself as an example, I do very well in stressful situations. Other people do not. There are some people who completely break down in a stressful situation. For me, again, I'm logical. I go through the process of, okay, was any of this in my control? Yes or no? And then from there, I kind of go through with how to figure it out. But for example, I was working with someone the other day. She was completely stressed, like out of her mind, so stressed. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I can't do anything like from my end to take that away for the situation that's happening. But what I can do is take care of everything else in this moment so she doesn't have to deal with it. And that's what I did. And again, in the moment when she was stressed, this helped a lot and nobody had to ask me to do it. So I think that when it comes to different emotional capacities, no one holds on to their feelings or expresses their feelings in the same way. And that is something that is normal. So let's normalize the fact that not everyone expresses themselves in the same way and that not everyone feels their feelings in the same way. Ooh, this one. Communication is always intentional and complete. Absolutely not. I admire the delusional optimism of wherever this assumption came from, but absolutely not. Communication is not always intentional and it's not always complete. I would definitely say more on the complete side of things as being very incorrect in this assumption. So, a lot of times people will assume that silence is a lack of interest or inconsistency is a lack of desire. A lot of times people don't know how to show up for someone. Or maybe they want to show up in a certain way, but the other person doesn't really, I'm going to say, appreciate the way that they show up simply because it's not the way that they would expect someone to show up. So I think that some people can communicate poorly and not truthfully. There was a lovely example in my life the other day when I asked someone a very direct question and they did everything they could to peddle around my question and not actually give me the full truth on it. And I know that they didn't give me the full truth on it because I saw their post on Facebook, which was why I asked the question. Because a lot of times, yes, we do ask the question when we already know the answer. And that was one of those. So, again, that's an example of someone communicating really poorly because I already knew the answer, but they literally danced around my question and never actually gave me an answer. Avoidance is so annoying. I find avoidant people like very irritating to my personality because I'm someone where I would rather you tell me the truth, even if it's gonna suck, than just stay silent or just constantly avoid the answer. Like that actually is an irritant of mine. So that's a perfect example of why communication is, well, let's say the lack of communication there is intentional and it is not complete because you don't know why they're avoiding and why they won't just give you an answer. I think that's something important. We're going to talk about this for a second with the phrase, if they wanted to, they would, is fear. And I've experienced this before, I already mentioned. Fear can be you're afraid of maybe ruining a friendship. Maybe you're friends and all of a sudden you were wondering, I wonder if there's more. But maybe you're afraid to say something. I think that when it comes to maybe going after an opportunity, there's always that fear that some people have of feeling embarrassed or, well, what if this doesn't work out right? And a lot of it tends to come from what other people think about you or about the situation. And that can definitely change things in terms of if you go after something or not. At the end of the day, it's up to you if you go after it or not. You need to make that decision if you're going to let some of those fears stop you. All right, you know I love a good game of devil's advocate, so let's go after it. If they wanted to, they would. This phrase can be interpreted in so many ways. Again, we already mentioned that some people like it because it can give closure. Some people like it because it almost is that reason that your brain is searching for. Like your brain loves to search for reasons as to why something happened the way that it happened. And this kind of helps. I mean, this is like in no scientific way whatsoever, but it almost just helps you to kind of process like, okay, it wasn't me, it was all on them. Right? So also you're avoiding blame for anything by thinking the phrase, if they wanted to, they would. I think that sometimes when someone doesn't do something, the automatic assumption is that, yeah, they didn't want to. They're not interested, whether it's romantic, a friendship, work, whatever it might be. When someone doesn't do something, we just think, okay, well, they didn't want to. And then we move on. But maybe it involves a conversation if it was something really important. Maybe this person is just really nervous to say something. And again, for devil's advocate, I'm always curious to be on the other side of why things happened the way that they did. And sometimes you're not going to get an answer. There's something that I know I'm never going to get a real answer for, and I just wish this person would have told me the truth. And I could easily just say if they wanted to, they would. But at the end of the day, I know that it's something so much deeper that they're just not telling me. And everyone's going to have their own reason, whether you like it or not, or whether you agree with it or not. You need to make your own decisions on how you're going to move forward with whatever the situation was. But I like to always think of putting yourself in their shoes. Like, think of how many times you wanted to do something, but you didn't do it. And think of the reasons why. Because if you have all of these reasons as to why you didn't do something that you wanted, this other person probably does too. And yeah, there's always a chance that this person just doesn't give a shit. And that's just how they are with everything in life. So yeah, occasionally this phrase is correct. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to think, okay, well, how many times did I want to say something but I didn't? And why didn't I say it? Whether it was fear or embarrassment or just nerves. There's always just those moments where you just put yourself in their shoes for a second. Or maybe you can't exactly put yourself in their shoes, but just to kind of give you that thought of, okay, well, maybe there is actually a reason why they didn't. Now, an uncomfortable truth for both sides is, number one, maybe they just really didn't want to. When you experience their inconsistent effort, or you experience a lot of waves of silence, or really short one-word answers, whatever it might be, maybe they just really didn't want to. And that's okay. The other half of that is maybe they really did want to, but they lack some capacity to show up. Maybe their maturity level isn't at the same level as yours, or maybe they're just not clear, so maybe their communication style is off. So this could totally go either way, and the intention matters, and so does the execution of the intention. But the thing is that most people will place this judgment of if they wanted to, they would, before they even figure out the intention and how this person tried to show it. Next time you think about the phrase, if they wanted to, they would, pause for a second and wonder why you're thinking this phrase in the first place, what the situation is, and if maybe this person is worth sticking around and trying to get down to the bottom of it and figuring out why maybe they didn't do what they wanted. When it comes to if they wanted to, they would, a lot of assumptions can easily come up by thinking about this phrase. So if you think that someone is worth a conversation after they didn't show up for you in the way that you expected them to, maybe think about having that conversation with them. A lot of times in today's world, we just assume that communication is easy for people. We assume that showing up for people all the time is something that should come easy if someone wants to. But at the end of the day, there's so much that can actually prevent someone from showing up in the way that you wish that they would. If they wanted to, they would is not wrong, but it truly is a phrase that has so many layers that, in my personal opinion, is worth diving into. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of She's Probably Talking to Other Guys. You can tune in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Video episodes are available on Spotify and YouTube. Follow along on social media at SPTTOG Podcast.